Oh Lord, what we gonna do here? I'm trying to figure this out, y'all. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so let me start over. All right, my name is April Burns Norris, the People's Advocate. I am the Executive Director of Community Bridges Incorporated, and we are a nonprofit organization that addresses the gaps and barriers in our current affordable housing and supportive services systems. Um, I really try to focus on um, issues that are causing delayed rapid rehousing of our current homeless population. There's a lot of funding available due to the CARES Act and American Rescue Plan that should be able to house a lot of the people that are currently homeless, but there has been some roadblocks that we are experiencing. Well, when I say we, I'm saying we as a community, because whether we realize it or not, our tax dollars are paying for these programs. And I believe that if we're going to allow our taxes to be used for something, we should want to make sure that those programs are being operated according to the agreements that they made to get the federal funding to do it. Because, if we agree to, take on a job description, or if we agree to purchase a house and we say we're going to pay this amount a month for this house and we're going to follow these rules, and if we don't uphold our end of the bargain, it doesn't normally turn out good in our favor. So when these programs and agencies say they're going to provide services based on the tax dollars that we provide for them, they need to be held accountable. And so that's what my organization has really been focused on, is holding these agencies accountable, because from my experience, a lot of these agencies are not being held accountable, and it is what is causing our current homelessness epidemic, crisis, or whatever, however you want to, label it. So, as y'all know, I've been doing a lot of trainings on these issues with HUD and, like I said, the American Bar Association. And I like to get information from credible sources so that when I come and give my feedback on what I've taken from what they've said and I compare it to what I've experienced, um, I want to make sure that I'm bringing you factual information, or as closest to factual as possible. And the reason why I say that is because as recently as yesterday, when I participated in the Section 8 home ownership training, um, it was they acknowledged the fact that this program has not been utilized very much in the past, and because of the increased interest in the program, they're going to have to start doing a lot more, uh, providing more guidance on it and training for PHAs, public housing authorities, and continuum of care programs, who are put in place to address the hard to serve people that are in need of affordable housing, such as the chronically homeless population. So to get it all started, I guess the first thing I kind of wanted to start it off with is because this came to my attention today. Um, and for those of you that don't know, I created my nonprofit organization because of my own experience with housing and disability discrimination and the lack of available resources and legal assistance or advocacy available for people with disabilities when we're faced with evictions and housing discrimination. Um, Even though we have a lot of agencies that are supposed to help us, uh, most of us that actually try to go through those processes, such as filing complaints, we realize that they're not really set up to get us justice. It's really just a um, protection barrier, in my opinion, that prevents people from actually filing their own lawsuits, because they really don't want to take this stuff to trial. because they know that they're not doing what they're supposed to do, and the results speak for themselves. Considering all of the money we're spending yearly on these programs, why are the homelessness rates not going down? Why are more people becoming homeless? It really just doesn't make sense. So what I found out today, dun, 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 based on my own argument that I've been fighting since 2018 in the federal courts anyways, the public housing authorities are not respecting the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. These are all laws that are put in place to ensure that people with disabilities have access to fair housing just like anybody else without a disability. They ain't been following the rules, and we wonder why we got more disabled people homeless today than ever, because the public housing authorities are the ones evicting them, and they're the ones that's supposed to be protecting them. I've been saying this on my own for a while. I've been getting involved in a lot of things with these courts and stuff, joining in on these panels just to listen and try to throw my 2 cents in wherever I can. And I've been letting them know, y'all need to check these courts and you need to check these public housing authorities, because it's not so much of the landlords that's the ones responsible for it. It's the people in the position to correct the landlord, such as the public housing authority, who could stop making those payments or could actually enforce or help file charges against the landlord when they know that the landlords are not doing what they're supposed to do. But they're not doing that because they're working together, y'all. I'm bringing it to y'all today because on February the 7th, 2022, an audit was done. And it was the title of it is HUD's Office of Public Housing and Voucher Programs, Washington, D.C. And it says request for reasonable accommodations in public housing. Basically, and I'm going to pull it up because I got it saved on here if it works the way I'm thinking it's supposed to. But because I can't wear my glasses on here because the reflection be off the chain. But so I printed it off so I could read, but I'm going to show it to y'all too here in a second. Hey, I was going to go through all of this and read it, but I was like, nah, we're just going to wing this. We're going to get on here and we're going to talk about it. Let me pull it on up for y'all though, because y'all, I've been telling people, but see, that's why I said I had tried to do a, one of those little online petitions to change.org. And the name of my petition was Housing Me Too. And I was bringing all of this information out about how HUD is not, these public housing authorities are causing the homelessness. I've been pushing stuff about this for years. I have been evicted twice in 2 years because of me speaking up for people with disabilities and for myself as a person with a disability. And what I've realized is they don't like it when you have really done your research and you know a little bit more than them, or you actually call them out on something and they realize that you're right. And then that means that they've been doing it wrong for a long time. Now, what does that say? If they've been doing it wrong for a long time, a lot of people got some claims against these people that they don't even know that they got claims for, because they're not even realizing they've been violated. Okay. So let me pull this up here right quick, because y'all, I don't be playing. HUD's Office of Public Housing and Voucher Programs. Boom. All right, let me see how I can get this rolling so we can get the reading. What we found, point blank period, HUD did not have adequate policies and procedures for ensuring that PHAs properly addressed, assessed, and fulfilled requests for reasonable accommodation. Period. That's what they found in the audit. HUD also did not perform civil rights front-end reviews as required. These conditions occurred because HUD, number one, did not include in its compliance monitoring guidance a requirement for personnel to review PHA's reasonable accommodation policies and procedures. Number two, had not updated its guidance to ensure that it was centralized. And number three, did not believe it was responsible for conducting civil rights front-end views. Show did. Acted like you ain't said nothing when you go to the public housing authority and complain about your rights as a person with a disability. Ask me how I know. As a result, PHAs did not receive consistent oversight in this area nationwide and may not be properly implementing existing requirements or not understand all the responsibilities related to requests for reasonable accommodation. Also, HUD's Office of Public and Indian Housing did not have the benefit of the information the reviews would have collected, and HUD's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity could not use the information to address issues that may have been identified or to pursue any corrective action. Now, ever since 2018, I've been arguing this. This is what my whole federal lawsuit is about. I'm calling it. They don't have to say, April, we sorry, because the court gonna say they sorry, because this is the whole issue that I have been saying, is that reasonable accommodations or requests for the public housing authority or your landlord to provide a change or to um change a rule in order to allow you to have full access to your apartment or to enjoy your apartment. And so, say for instance, if you got a neighbor that's noisy and it bothers your mental health, you can ask for a reasonable accommodation for them to either relocate you to a different apartment or to help put up some type of insulation to where you're not being inconvenienced just because of your disability, because otherwise most people will do whatever to either ignore or either they're okay with the noise. But just because you have a disability and most people are not bothered by something that triggers you doesn't mean that you don't have a right to speak up about how you've been affected by whatever. And evidently the public housing authorities have been feeling that people didn't have a right. And so the results are in, y'all. I mean, this is the Office of Inspector General. This ain't what I said. So that's what I be saying. I've been saying this since 2018. But now this came out from them. Now watch, people gonna start talking about it. That's just how it works. I'm just here to tell you. All right. It says right here, backgrounds and objectives. And I'm just gonna hit this first page or two. We ain't gonna read this whole article because I got some other things I want to discuss. But I did want to hit this first to kind of give you some insight on why I do what I do. I do this because if I don't, things like this will continue to go on and never will be addressed. And that's why we have stayed oppressed for these amount of years, because to be honest, the public housing authorities have several programs that would help a lot of people become homeowners and to be self-sufficient, to even start businesses and everything. But most people are not even aware of it because they're not advertising this that way. They don't really, in my opinion, they're not really trying to help you become self-sufficient or to help you become a homeowner, because then you're building generational wealth and you won't need their programs. So it kind of defeats the purpose of, if they don't if they don't have people like us needing their programs, then they don't have a job. Okay, so the background and objective. It says a public housing agency, and I'm gonna go ahead and put this up bigger. So y'all can see it. I might even take me off because I'm gonna do it like that. All right. A public housing agency must provide access to housing for qualified disabled individuals in the same manner as for those who are not disabled, and provide reasonable accommodations, modifications, or both when necessary. A reasonable accommodation is a change, exception, or adjustment to a rule, policy, practice, or service that may be necessary for a person with disabilities to have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling, including public and common use spaces, or to fulfill their program obligations. There's a difference between a reasonable accommodation and a reasonable modification. And the modification is a structural change made to existing premises, occupied or to be occupied by a person with a disability in order to afford such person full enjoyment of the premises. For instance, if you're in a wheelchair, you may need a wheelchair ramp. They'll need to help you get that installed. They can't just make it. You have to figure out how you're gonna get up those steps, even though you know what I'm saying? So a lot of public housing authorities and landlords and stuff think that it's an option. And or either they'll drag it out and make people wait a long time to get these type of accommodations or modifications, and sometimes not even provide them at all. Um, and they give some examples of reasonable accommodations and modifications. And it says, such thing as parking spaces. A tenant with a mobility impairment who has difficulty walking is provided a reasonable accommodation by receiving an assigned accessible parking space in front of his or her unit. You know, the policy about tenants having to hand deliver their rent payments. If a person has a hard time walking, they can ask to mail their rent payment. Or if they don't have any transportation, or it says a tenant with a mental disability who is afraid to leave his or her unit is provided a reasonable accommodation by being allowed to mail the rental payments. The no pet policy. And then the structural modifications include adding grab bars to the bathrooms, installing ramps to enter the building for a wheelchair-bound tenant, or lowering the entry threshold of the tenant's unit. Now, this is the key part. Failure to provide a reasonable accommodation may be construed as disability discrimination, and housing discrimination complaints filed on a failure to provide a reasonable accommodation were generally increasing every year from fiscal years 2009 to 2019, even as the total number of all housing discrimination complaints was decreasing. So that means people with disabilities was gaining their voices, and they were saying, hey, this ain't right. And they were filing complaints. It says, according to annual reports published by HUD's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, during the 11-year period from 2009 to 2019, the total number of housing discrimination complaints had decreased 24.5% from 10,242 to 7,729, while the number of housing discrimination complaints based on a failure to provide reasonable accommodation had increased by 46.1% from 2,430 to 3,550. Yeah, they speaking up. Also in 2009, the share of housing discrimination complaints attributed to failure to provide reasonable accommodation was 23.7% compared to 45.9% in 2019, as shown in the table below. It says HUD's Office of Public and Indian Housing is responsible for oversight of PHA's operations, which should include the processing of reasonable accommodation requests in public housing. HUD's Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity is responsible for receiving and investigating complaints under the Fair Housing Act to determine whether there is reasonable cause to believe that discrimination has occurred or is about to occur. As the objective of the audit, it says our audit objective was to determine whether HUD had adequate policies and procedures for ensuring that PHAs properly addressed, assessed, and fulfilled requests for reasonable accommodation, including COVID-19 related requests. So clearly the title of the audit, and it shows that the findings, let me keep y'all updated as we go. Results of the audit finding: HUD did not have adequate policies and procedures for ensuring that public housing agencies properly process requests for reasonable accommodation. I can't wait to add this into my federal suit. See, man, that's why I be knowing when other things are coming up and it be all God's timing. That's all I'm gonna say. Cause see, this is major. Cause that was what their argument was whether or not I had my rights for reasonable if they had been denied or whatever. When I didn't get it, did I? Did I get the reasonable accommodation? No, I got evicted. So therefore it didn't get provided. Stop playing with me. But anyway, just wanted to bring that part to y'all. Now, what's next on here? Section 8 home ownership. Section 8 home ownership. Let's jump on over here. All right. So this is about the program, the training that I was doing yesterday. And this one right here actually has a lot of stuff that, hold on a minute, y'all. Okay. Yeah, so this one has a lot of information, especially for people that may be considering getting involved in developing affordable housing or housing programs for people with disabilities or whatever. I don't know. But the issue is here. We have information now that verifies that this program does exist. What we have been experiencing as people that have been on Section 8, that have been interested in the program, is that not very many housing authorities offer the program. And if they do offer it, it's kind of like pulling teeth to get access to it. Like it's like this hidden gem or whatever. So, okay, the goal of the webinar is to help explain and discuss common issues in the repositioning process. Okay, the repositioning is like reestablishing, because like even though this program has existed for years, ain't nobody been using it because they haven't been really advocating its use. They've been kind of focusing more on the low-income housing tax credit and tax-exempt bond programs. Kind of like, in my opinion, they've been steering people to go live in those programs instead of allowing people to use their vouchers for home ownership, which once again would have allowed them to build generational wealth. Also, I wanted to tie this into the whole disability related reasonable accommodations. That is a valid reasonable accommodation, is to be able to use your voucher for home ownership. But because the Public Housing Authority has not even been fully aware and utilizing or implementing the reasonable accommodation protection for a person with a disability, clearly it goes to explain why they've been denying people with disabilities the right to use their Section 8 vouchers for home ownership. They didn't feel like they had the right to do that. So this just ties back into Section 8 is Section 8. Just because a person has a disability does not mean that they are not able to choose which type of housing that they want. So these were the presenters that were doing the training. And clearly programs that PHAs can implement to help families achieve home ownership. And see, the key part to this whole thing is it's up to the PHAs to implement it. But in my opinion, based on our current affordable housing crisis and the homelessness, pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it, why would you not be trying to use whatever resources you already have to house people and to create more housing for other people? If we don't move people out of the project-based housing and the public housing, if we don't ever help them achieve self-sufficiency and help them gain, access to the home ownership, then we're not going to have space to quickly house the people that are homeless. I mean, why would you keep creating more public housing when people in public housing are ready to be homeowners? We just need to transition them out. But you would think that they're feeling like this program don't exist when this program already exists. So part of the different programs that they have to help people get home ownership is the counseling for home ownership. They can help you get your credit together, or just kind of helping you kind of learn about the things that um will come along with being a homeowner, because people do need to realize you won't have a maintenance man to call anymore. You know what I'm saying? So these counseling programs kind of get you prepared on the things that you may not have already learned while living in public housing or whatever. The capital funds, assistance to families. This can help with the down payment and closing costs and the credit counseling. Um, the capital funds assistance can be only used for public housing families to do home ownership. And so this whole program kind of went over like 3 different programs that HUD has that helps with home ownership. And I'm like, where they been? Because I've been asking them people for forever, before I even got evicted the first time, can I use my voucher for home ownership? And that was like a big no. But to know that there's all of these different programs and it's supposed to be included in their 5-year action plan, why are they keeping this stuff a secret? Okay, so using vouchers to pay mortgages. This is where we come into the Section 8 home ownership. This is just going over the whole requirements of, you got to have a your financing criteria be provided, insured, or guaranteed by the state or federal government. So they're going to want you to use a traditional lending source. So that, to me, that's where, when you're working with the housing counseling, they're going to help you get connected with lenders that are already prepared to work with the program. And this is the thing here. A PHA has the discretion to establish requirements for financing purchase of a home to be assisted under the home ownership option. But once again, if the PHA is really interested in housing people and finding out new solutions to quickly house the people that have been chronically homeless, you would want to implement any type of program that's available to help people transition. I mean, why not let people be homeowners if they're willing and able and ready? You got some people living in public housing that are paying $600 and $700 a month. Why are they not able to be homeowners? It's time for this information to get out. So y'all share this information. If it's not something that you feel like it's helpful for you, like, just share it for someone else that may be that may have a voucher or may be on a waiting list. They just need to know that this is an option, because what I've seen happen a lot too is that people that receive vouchers, because of the shortage of available units, a lot of their vouchers end up expiring and they don't even get to use them because they never could locate a rental unit. Well, how about if they were probably ready to be a homeowner, but they were not aware that that was even an option. So this is why I'm sharing this information. So it can be owner occupied. It has to be it has to pass the housing quality standards. Can only be 1 unit. So I'm assuming if you were wanting to sell your house to someone that had a voucher and wanted to use it for home ownership, you would have to be willing to do all of the whole processing for the title and all that stuff. This whole process will come along just like Section 8. You're gonna have a housing assistance payment contract, And basically whatever they would be paying to your landlord, and if your contract rent is $1,100 and you pay 30% of that, you're going to still pay that same 30% with your voucher, using it for home ownership. And the thing about the voucher for people with disabilities is that all of these requirements that apply to people without disabilities, like, the term of the voucher assistance, if you got a 20-year mortgage, then the voucher is going to be good for 15 years. That's the way it's broke down. But if you're elderly and disabled, that doesn't apply to you. And see, that's why I believe that they have been intentionally not allowing people that are disabled and elderly know that this is an option, because they really didn't want them to have this. Like, we don't have any time limit, so you wouldn't be able to cut it off after 10, 15 years. As long as they're disabled, and most people, they're going to require them to be permanently disabled before they even qualify for these programs. Programs that expand the supply of home ownership units. This goes into, like, if public housing authorities wanted to sell land that they already have and allow people to use that land to develop units for home ownership, that can be done too. This is Section 18, disposition. Yeah. It's so capital funds, eligible uses. You see here, relocation assistance is on this list, including mobility counseling, home ownership, and credit counseling, down payment and closing costs. So reason why I'm pointing out the relocation assistance, because when I have been making an issue about the hundreds of residents that got evicted from that unit that got almost $20 million in tax-exempt bonds and tax credit, low-income housing tax credit financing. Instead of them evicting them, they were supposed to provide them permanent relocation assistance. That relocation assistance could have came from so many different pots of funding. There was no reason why people should have ended up homeless. It didn't have to necessarily come through the URA, the Uniform Relocation Act, or the anti-displacement through the, COC. It could have came from Emergency Solution Grants Fund, and it could have came from these capital funds. It could have came from, so many different things, especially when this is done in connection with you demolishing a public housing complex. Some of this will get, and a lot of these slides are actually created for public housing authorities that are interested in learning ways to create more housing. So this is kind of detailed for just someone that's not really used to reading this type of stuff. Like, if this is not something that you're already knowledgeable of, it's going to be like a foreign language. So, but the point, I'm just trying to put this information out there, for one, to let the people know that the information is available. Also, to let these agencies know that we know this information is available. And so even if, I may not, a lot of people call me sometimes for to ask advice about certain things. I may not be available all the time, but if I don't do anything else but at least make people aware of where to locate this information, then I feel like I've done my job here. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel like we need to see more African American developers getting involved in providing affordable housing and transitional housing and permanent supportive housing. We need to care about these people too, the least of these, because some of us can afford it. We choose to use our money on other things, but we never know what could happen. It's not always that you don't have a job, that's why you're homeless. Well, if your house catches on fire, or a natural disaster happens, Homelessness doesn't discriminate. So I really feel like people should become more um uh involved and do just like the other people do. They use these things as this is how they're creating generational wealth, okay? Because just because you're providing a service to someone that is disadvantaged doesn't mean that you have to do it and not gain any benefit from it. I mean, people get paid well to provide these housing projects and stuff. So I really feel like it's time for us to broaden our horizons and realize that we won't get a seat at the table unless we ask for it and collectively ask for it. There's different ways you can use this funding to create co-op units where you can have like a community land trust, and the land trust owns the property, but people can buy the interest in that home, and then if they decide they want to move from the home, they can sell their interest in that home to someone else, but the land remains owned by the land trust. And so it's just a lot of information in here that I think would be useful. And I will try to add it in the link. If maybe it'll stay in there some kind of way. We'll see. But just know that the information is available. Now the next topic that we was going to talk about is the emergency housing vouchers. Okay. Now, let's get over here. All right, so just to kind of show the thing, see, me personally, I'm always coming at it from the angle of looking for ways to advocate for people with disabilities. That's my goal. So when I'm looking at these things, I know that when I was on that Section 8 homeownership webinar, one of the people from HUD had told me that you can't use the emergency housing vouchers for home ownership. I kind of felt like that didn't make sense. I was like, okay, well, why would you not do that? If it's a voucher, it should be a voucher. I understand that it may come from different funding, but it shouldn't be called a voucher if it's not operating like a voucher. So I just wanted for people to be aware that some of HUD staff are saying that you can't use this type of voucher the same way you would use a regular voucher. That may be something that would make you decide whether or not, that you do want the emergency housing voucher or you don't want it, especially if you're already on a regular housing voucher waiting list. I personally feel that based on some of the some of the questions that was asked in this thing about for emergency housing vouchers, I believe that they can be used for homeownership. I believe that the people that acknowledged that they were not very familiar with it and they were trying to get more information available for the homeownership program. I think they just assumed that it wouldn't be because it is a different funding source. But what made me feel that I believe that would be changed if we brought it to their attention is because someone asked a question on here somewhere about porting a emergency housing voucher to a jurisdiction that didn't have emergency housing vouchers. How would that be handled? And they said that they would switch it to a regular voucher. And this question 19 also, it says, are emergency housing voucher households eligible to participate in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program? The answer, yes, because emergency housing voucher is part of tenant-based rental assistance under Section 8 of the, wait a minute. My bad, y'all. of the Housing Act of 1937, emergency housing voucher households are eligible to apply for and may be selected by the PHA to enroll in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. So the Family Self-Sufficiency Program is the program I was saying that they will allow public housing residents to save money towards starting a business or home ownership, and that way that they're, whatever money that they're agreeing to save for that is not counted as income, so their rent would not be based on that income. A lot of people have taken advantage of it, but I believe more people should take advantage of it if it was made more readily available. But if they're going to allow people to participate in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program with the emergency housing voucher, then why I believe they would be allowing them to participate in the home ownership. And another thing that made me say that was this is going over the continuum of care stuff. Okay, it might be this one. Are PHAs allowed to accept referrals outside the coordinated entry system if the coordinated entry system does not have anyone on the list from multiple eligible categories? Okay, that one ain't it. Now, this is another thing that may be of interest. When seeking assistance from HUD due to lack of referrals from the COC, what information should a PHA submit to HUD? It says the CE system does not have, if the CE system does not have a sufficient number of eligible families to refer to the PHA, or the coordinated entry system does not identify families that may be eligible for emergency housing voucher assistance because they are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, or stalking or human trafficking. That's not what I was looking for. Hold on, y'all. And this is another thing that would make me say that it should be eligible for homeownership. Can individuals and families in rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and or permanent supportive housing be prioritized for emergency housing vouchers as they may need less intensive or no case management, therefore allowing for openings in rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and or permanent supportive housing? PHAs are required to work with community partners to determine the best use and targeting for the vouchers along with other resources available in the community. A COC and a PHA may choose to prioritize those in rapid rehousing, transitional housing, or permanent supportive housing as a moving on strategy. So basically, yeah. One good thing is, like on number 55, it states that determinations about admissions for emergency housing vouchers based on criminal screenings must be based on an individualized assessment of relevant mitigating information. What are the PHA's responsibility for communicating the outcome of the assessment to the applicant? They need to let them know, basically. Prompt written notice of a decision denying admission, and the notice must give a brief statement of the reason for the decision. It says the notice must also state that the applicant may request an informal review of the decision and state how to arrange for the informal review. But I also saw somewhere that for the emergency housing vouchers, they can't, like if you don't have a record that has like violence or, certain things, it's like you totally ban sexual assault, stuff like that. If you just got like some misdemeanor stuff or something that is not considered dangerous, I don't think the emergency housing voucher, they're supposed to hold that against you. Um, for the emergency housing voucher, they will pay the security deposits for you also. You can't use an emergency housing voucher on a project-based unit. That's number 65. Oh, check this one. On number 85, may a PHA use a portion of the emergency housing voucher service fee for groceries and toiletries? And it says that the PIH notice 2021-15 states that PHAs may use the service fee funding to assist the family with some or all of the costs of acquiring essential household items as defined by the PHA. The examples of tableware and bedding provided in the notice are not exhaustive. Number 87 asks, can service fees be used for expenses such as storage expenses and lock changes to support the needs of emergency housing voucher families? Yes. Moving expenses are eligible use for the service fees when the family initially leases a unit with the emergency housing voucher. So yes, and some more stuff on there. They can use those that funding for so many things. Okay, can the PHA use emergency housing voucher service fees to hire staff? Yes, that's what I'm telling y'all. And so there's no reason why they're not processing these applications and getting people housed, because if hire some people. Hire some people. I even told my caseworker at Helen Ross McNabb, since they only have one staff person working on for 5 programs, hey, I'll work part-time to help you. They ain't trying to hear that though. So we really have to start making them hear what we have to say. And that's once again, that's why I'm doing this video, is just for documentation, to let them know, hey, we know, and I want you to know we know. Hopefully, because you see that we know and everybody else knows, maybe you'll start doing what you're supposed to do based on the policy and procedure. Because if we were the ones in charge and we were not following the policy and procedure, we wouldn't be allowed to continue having the paychecks coming in that we get. Yeah. Can COC staff do the housing quality standard inspection and be paid from the PHA administrative fee? Yes. Honey, I'm telling you, this thing is so full of all kinds of ways and how we just allowing people to become homeless when all of these different scenarios. Look at here. It says, what additional fees will PHAs qualify for under emergency housing vouchers? PHAs that accept an allocation of emergency housing vouchers will receive fees in addition to ongoing administrative fees to assist in the facilitation and leasing of emergency housing vouchers. Additional fees include preliminary fees. $400 will be awarded per allocated emergency housing voucher. $400 just off the rip. Issuing fees. The PHA will earn $100 once the voucher is initially leased. Placement fees. PHAs will be awarded $500 for each emergency housing voucher family placed under a HAP contract no later than 4 months after the effective date of the ACC funding increment. Ongoing administration fees. PHAs will receive the full column A admin fee amount. Service fees. For each allocated emergency housing voucher, PHAs will receive $3,500 must be initially used for the service fees. I think that's for the program. And the service fees can be used for housing search assistance, security and utility deposits, application fees, moving expenses. The point is, there's no reason why people should still be out here without housing with all this flexibility and all this funding out here. Can service fees be used for landlord incentives? Yes, landlord incentives are eligible use of. So, like, okay, you don't have no landlords. Pay them do what you got to do to get them landlords to stop playing. Is what y'all need to do. Portability. Here, I think this is where. Are there specific guidelines for the billing of services rendered for reported emergency housing vouchers? Hold on, I think it's a different one. Yeah, here this one is number 113. If an emergency housing voucher family ports to a non-emergency housing voucher PHA, does the family become a tenant in the regular housing choice voucher program? Yes. The voucher should be administered in accordance with the regular housing choice voucher requirements and PHS policies. The initial PHA should inform the family that if they choose to port to a non-emergency housing voucher public housing authority jurisdiction, then their new voucher will be administered in accordance with the requirements of the regular housing choice voucher program, not the emergency housing voucher program. If porting to a non-emergency housing voucher PHA occurs in the initial lease-up, the receiving PHA can provide supportive services on behalf of the family in consultation and coordination with the initial PHA. However, service fee funding must be provided up front by the initial PHA for them to do so. There it go right there. It need to be used as a regular voucher because, come on. The voucher should be administered in accordance with the regular housing choice voucher requirements and PHA's policies, period. So why would they say that you can't use it for home ownership if the other ones can be? See, it took me to have to get all the way to number 113 to say, in my opinion, checkmate. So, and that's not to try to challenge them, but we can't be given incorrect information that's going to cause barriers to people. So I take pride in fine-tooth combing through things to just see, okay, let me see if this is accurate. And because if nobody says anything about that, then they'll be saying that people can't use that the same way as a regular voucher. That was what I was told. I have evidence of this. They record the whole Zoom meetings and all that stuff. So, Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to come and bring the facts of the matter because, like I said, I just need it documented. This will be going on to my Community Bridges Incorporated Facebook page, as well as my The People's Advocate YouTube page. I will eventually be moving all of this stuff to my website whenever I get around to it. But I'm documenting it, and I'm getting content created so that when I do move everything over to my website, it'll be accessible. I'm just trying to create a library of information that even for myself I can go back on eventually, just in case my actual paper copies or hard copies get misplaced. I like to record things on these digital platforms. So also just getting the information out there to the people. So with that being said, I'm gonna get on up out of here because I'm a little bit tired, y'all. I did want to just come on and get this information out there. And if you all have any questions or if you want access to these documents, just hit me up. I mean, little chat box, whatever, or email me, communitybridges1111@gmail.com, or just comment on the YouTube page or the Facebook page, and I'll try to send you the link to this information. But shit, I'm gonna get on off from here. I'm tired. But anyway, with love, light, and life lessons learned, this is Queen Aries, the People's Advocate, and I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.